Welcome to a Community Partners interview where we explore the organization's opportunities and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Sean Pickard, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio, all abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Erika Cedillo, who is the Director of Public Policy and Programs for Inclusion BC. Inclusion BC is a federation of members that work together to build inclusive communities. They're a connection point between people in the community experiencing barriers to inclusion and government decision makers. They're a federation working with partners to build community and to enhance the lives of children, youth, adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and their families by building awareness, inspiring action, and advancing rights. Thank you for joining us today, Erika. How are you doing?
Thank you for the invitation. Doing very well, Sean. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, before we get going into everything Inclusion BC here, what is the Erika Cedillo story? What inspired you to work at Inclusion BC? Why work with individuals with disabilities?
Oh, thank you for starting with that question. Lots of things bring me to this work. It's as it happens in many of us in this sector. It becomes personal and professional. And what brings me to this work is I grew up in what I will consider an inclusive family. My grandma raised the youngest of my dad's sister. She had significant support needs as she grew all the way in her 57 fabulous years. And I grew up in an inclusive family. Then as I formed my own family, my eldest daughter has also disabilities. And as I completed my graduate studies and I was deciding my next stage in life, I really felt this calling that is like, how can I use the knowledge, talents, gifts that I might have to share with the community and support other families like mine. And then came the opportunity to work at Inclusion BC, where it's, I gotta say, a fantastic match in values, in ideas, in goals and aspirations. And that's what bring me here, being able to support other families and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to build wonderful lives, to thrive in their communities. So it, as I say, it's personal and professional because I'm very fortunate to do policy advocacy, and it's something that brings me a lot of joy and excitement and passion in my everyday. So what else can I ask for?
I love how you phrase that, Erika. It's personal and professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about some myths and misconceptions here. I'm sure there are some folks that have, let's say, some misunderstandings about clients of Inclusion BC. So are there any myths and misconceptions about the clients of Inclusion BC?
Well, as you clearly share in the opening, the focus of our work is people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their families, and community organizations who support them. So among our membership, we have people of all these different spaces, and the organizations who support people in community, we are 70 and we are across the province of British Columbia. And sometimes there's quite a few misconceptions with little by little we keep on clarifying what is we're always aspiring to be very clear on what is our goal, and our vision is a world where everybody belongs, right? Like when each person can be the best they can be with the support that they need and just thrive in their communities, and we all can achieve that in many different ways. We also know that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities within the group of disabilities, it's a small group or percentage of the population. However, is a group of people who are often marginalized, or their voices and their experiences and opinions are discounted by the fact of an intellectual disability. So most of what we do in every day of our work is bringing awareness as well on how a person with an intellectual and developmental disabilities is another person who has dreams, aspirations, and they need support just like every other person needs support. So really trying to make clear that it's a shared responsibility to open opportunities for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and to really, what we say typically in our conversations and presentations, like people are people, and that's what is our hope, and that the rest of the society will see people with intellectual and developmental disabilities for all the wonderful things that they can contribute to society and support them in achieving their best possible self.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, Erica, like leading into my next question here, I've heard a number of different things. And so I think we're
Mhm.
going to have to break this next question into two different ways here.
Okay.
Let's talk people wise, so the clients, and then let's talk the policymaking position,
Mhm.
the government and the rights aspect. Can we do that?
Of course. Happy to do it.
Oh, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about what Inclusion BC does. I've heard an awful lot about working with an individual themselves and an awful lot about policy making. So let's break it down to those two ways. But what does Inclusion BC do?
Awesome. That is a great opportunity for me to break down exactly that, what we do. So, our work, we call it like four main pillars, and I'll be happy to just dive in more into each of them. But we have our individual and family advocacy. Another one is public policy and systems advocacy. Then we have conference and learning events. And the fourth one is community partnerships and engagement. Because all that we do, we work relationally. So we connect with community partners with different themes and topics and interests to keep on advancing the work that we want to see. And in our engagement, we make very intentional outreaches to different organizations and groups of the population, and always centering the voices of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So, in the part about individual and family advocacy, this program in particular, or this a pillar of our work, what we have is the Community Inclusion Advocacy Program and the Family Support Workers Network. And with these, I'm gonna probably jump a little bit in between our pillars, Sean. But the whole point, I will kind of bring the round of how Inclusion BC goes into all these pillars. So we have an advocacy line in which people with intellectual and developmental disabilities or their family members call us, reaching out because they are experiencing barriers to inclusion. And here I can mention that we support people across the lifespan. So from the early years when a little baby is born, along lines of early childcare, K to 12 education, and then into adulthood in all the dimensions of adulthood until the end of life. So no matter which stage of life a person is, we support them when they are experiencing barriers to inclusion. So they contact us for a numerous variety of topics you would not imagine, from setting up a banking account to explaining their disabilities to their employers, children who are not able to access inclusive education as they are supposed to, or little ones who are not welcome in childcare centers because they have support needs that the childcare center cannot support. So a variety of topics. So from that, in our community inclusion advocacy program, we explain to people we're a small and mighty team of two advocates and myself in this section of the organization, and we support people explaining them what are the processes, what are the rights. Many people contact us and saying like, I want to understand what are my rights around this issue or the rights of my child with a disability. So we explain what are their rights, and we know the processes, so we guide them into like, okay, this is the people you should contact to, or this is the process that you should follow. So we guide them, and our goal is we explaining in terms of we advocate with, not for, because we believe in strengthening the capacity for self-advocacy. So we give people information, provide the tools, and most of it, the encouragement and validation that you have these rights and you can advocate in this and these ways. And we journey with thousands of people. In the last year, we supported 1,400 situations. Each of them is a person, right, with their story and how they are experiencing barriers to inclusion. With what we learn from all the people that we support in the one-on-one situations, we identify trends. We find pain points in different systems, and that would become the basis to inform our systemic advocacy. So when we understand that programs are creating barriers, the decisions, the policies, the attitudes, all the ways in which we can look at accessibility from a disability perspective, we look at informing the changes in systems. So we build up our position statements, which are rights-based, evidence-informed documents that are very concise into what are people's rights, what we expect to see, what are the challenges that they are experiencing, and with very concrete calls to action. So these position statements, we have them in a wide range of themes, and each of them give us direction. So that's what we use in our day to day when there's a change of government, change of policies, when there's been no change in policies that we keep on persevering on it. So advocacy, systemic advocacy is a marathon in which you have to pace yourself. So at every turn, in every situation, it's like, okay, we try this path, it didn't work. Okay, we dust ourselves up and then start looking at a different option, and always working relationally in really bringing to decision makers the experiences of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families, and how they can make different policy choices that would improve people's lives. So I'm gonna make a pause here because I know I can go into a long stretch explaining, but I think that is the first part of what we do, how we do it, and in all of that, as I was saying, in sharing and the learning event, we create different learning events like our conference, family leadership series, the youth employment summit, navigating barriers to inclusion virtual series. So we have a lot of things going on, but this is a little bit of the first gist of what we do.
That is some incredible work that Inclusion BC does, and I'm very happy to hear that it's so personalized, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it kind of makes me wonder, though, Erica, how do you decide who gets what support? Do you have a sorting hat? Like, how do folks get into what program?
Well, in this case, it's not that we sort people. All the work that we do, we and our documents, our resources, they are open to everyone who wants to participate. What we keep a strong focus is on the specific experience of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And if people call us, we have developed a specific expertise around this topic. And what we do is when people call us, we try to be a one-stop place to really, it's either us who can support them or connect them directly and do a soft connection into other organizations who can best support them. When it's about mobility needs, and we have several organizations in BC which we identify who can best support. It's not that we know everything, but thankfully we have lots of relationships, connections, and knowledge in which we can start telling people, you know what, this this particular barrier that you're experiencing, maybe it's not Inclusion BC, the best organization to support you, but you can contact this and this and this. And if this doesn't work, feel free to contact us again, and we'll try something different. So that's the approach that we take to it. We don't want to just send people away and say like, "Oh, you don't fit our mandate. You not us," and hung up. We don't do that. We know that if people are reaching out to a provincial advocacy organization, it's because they need help. And our goal is to either, within our expertise, being able to support them and guide them through the process, or connect them to the area that would best, or an organization that would best suit them. For example, there's a lot, when we talk about rights, there's a lot of legal issues, and we are not a legal advocacy organization. So, but we explain to people and offer some of the options that are out there who can provide them legal support.
I love that. Everything is geared to the individual and what they need, not just, you know, hey, you're another number. So thank you
Yeah.
for that, Erica.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's very important for us, and that we are always in contact and with the people we work for and with, right? Like it is, we use the the opportunities that we have, and we create some of the opportunities to embed ourselves in circles, coalitions, and relationships that would help us to to advance. And that's what our members actually also look us for, right? Like this, like what we really expect from you is to advance the systemic advocacy to improve people's lives. So we learn from our organizational members, we learn from the people we hear in the advocacy line, we from the events when we connect. Being in community is one of the things that we absolutely love. It's one of my favorite opportunities. And for example, when we do the family leadership series, this is an event that moves across the province, and the goal is to create opportunities for learning and connection. We bring presentations and workshops that would give people skills, tools, and knowledge to become leaders in their own communities. Many family members, surprisingly, or people with intellectual and developmental disabilities themselves, sometimes they don't see themselves as leaders, but we tell them, you have knowledge, so you are a leader, and you can share these. When you can share these with others and empower others to advocate in their communities, you're building leadership. And that's what we want to bring with the family leadership series. Last year, for example, we did it in Cranbrook and in Campbell River. So we bring a couple of, like a few of our staff, but we create really with our member organizations in these regions of the province, we create a committee, right? And it's like, okay, what would be most helpful for the families living in your area? These are some of the workshops that we can use. So these are some things that we have prepared before. So, and there's, for example, the theme of advocacy. That's kind of a must have in the series, because we go into giving tools and how you can advocate in the systems that intersect in your community, right? So with that, but the other key component is connection, 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 connection. So building that network and giving family and people with disabilities the opportunity to connect with one another. And it's beautiful to see, Sean, when we are in a community and say like, oh, I didn't know about this organization. Can we meet later on after this event? So we create the space for those relationships to flourish, and then they will take them on their own. So that brings us a lot of really hope and a strengthening in our collective efforts, right? So, and we end those events with saying, remember that now we know one another. So you don't need to do this alone. We can always reach out to one another and we'll figure it out. And if one way doesn't work, we'll think of a new one. For sure, we are strong, perseverant people.
Absolutely. And I just, there were so many things that just caught my attention there, Erika, that I can't pick just one about what we were talking about. But let's do this instead, right?
Sure.
This is one of my favorite questions here, Erika. So, without using any names, without identifying anyone, can you share a success story with me? What happened when someone reached out and asked for help? What supports were put in place?
And your favorite question, my favorite question, in the hardest one, because I have so many stories that I could share. But let me tell you this one. And it's let me choose one. Can I choose two?
Let's go with two. Let's go with two.
Okay, because I want to share with you, like in the children world and in the adult world, because there's a lot of nuances in these spaces. So, in the children world, a family called us and told us, like, I would like to understand where are my child's rights, because he's been going to school only for 2 hours, and I don't think they are gaining all that they need to gain in their learning. It's like, okay, of course. So we connect them with an advocate, and we start saying like, okay, tell me more, what is happening. When did he or she started, your child has started going to school for 2 hours? It's like, well, they are in grade 4. Up to this day, they have never gone to school full day. That is a huge flag. Like, that should not happen. All children have the right to an inclusive education. And this is something that is recognized in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in the national frameworks like the BC Human Rights, the Canadian Human Rights, and in the BC School Act and its regulations, right? So you can imagine that it's shocking that a child has not gone to school for more than 2 hours for 4 or 5 years of their life. So we go in and we say like, okay, let's see what are their support needs. And what is most important is what is like, what does this student need to succeed in their day to day? And it's not, our conversation is not about, do you have the budget for it? Or do you think you can do it? It's like, we know this child has a right. We want to understand what are the challenges that you're experiencing. And when one of these children, it was like, you know what, he was getting too too excited and was kind of moving too much around. And we found that we can provide him 2 hours of support in the morning. And that's why he only comes 2 hours. And it's like, well, how do we make a plan to make sure that he can start going to school for the full day? Even if we go into small increments, so gradually increasing, because as all people, we cannot build a stamina unless we are constantly practicing something. So it's like, okay, the 2 hours you have them solved. So how do we go to 2 hours and a half? What do you need to tweak in the classroom, in the playground? And it happened that this little one needed some support in the playground to remind him what was expected or unexpected, how he can play better with his peers. And then in the classroom, they made some adjustments in terms of giving him some cards on how he could take some little breaks. So we were so thrilled that within 2 months, he was going to school full time. So many of the support needs are not attached to having more funds. Although, don't get me wrong, our education system needs much more funding to have more resources and qualified staff and teachers and specialized teachers to support students. But many of the changes are about little tweaks, creating universal supports in the classroom that actually benefit other children that are not identified as a disability. But when you create an inclusive environment, you realize that everyone benefits from it. So it was so exciting. And then the advocate supporting these families, like, guess what? So and so is finally going to school full time. So that is a day of celebration for us. And we hope that this is the experience for every single student with a disability across our province and, of course, across Canada. So that's my children's example. But on the other side, on the adult, I'm going to share an experience of a young woman who was living in a supported home, and their parents were really struggling on something was happening. She was different. She was not coping in the same way. She was not engaged in the activities that she usually liked, and she was having what some of them would call a lot of behaviors. And I put that in quotation marks because that's often what it says, like, oh, there's lots of behaviors, something is wrong. And she was overly medicated. So she needed access to really an assessment, a fulsome assessment of what she needed to understand what was going on and how her support could be changed. So after, I'm not going to lie, Sean, a good year of advocacy, of back and forth on explaining what are things that were not working, how important it was, and the wait list to access these assessment center, which is very small. It has 10 beds for the whole province of British Columbia. So it's very little. And we're advocating to increase the capacity of this center because for this young woman, once she went there, she had a full review of her medications, of what was going on with her, and understanding what she wanted to express and convey. She comes out of the provincial assessment center and goes back into community. And now her mom just shared with us that she's living in a new home with wonderful support. She's going out in community. They figure out, like, it was, and we as adults, we don't stay the same from 19 to until we die, right? So it was a matter of really meeting what was going on with this young woman and so, like, something. And she's in her probably 30s, right? So I still call her young because I'm older than her. So she was in her 30s and she was just going through a change in her life. And right now she is exploring community. She's probably thinking about some volunteering options for her. Her life has expanded. And these for us, like when we stop listening from families and here and there they come back, sometimes they send us a Christmas card. I just want to let you know that my daughter is happy and thriving in her community. We wish you happy holidays. So that for us is another wonderful win in which we were able to center the experience of the person, and then bring the systems around them to say, like, what does she need health wise? What does she need for supports at home? And how can she thrive in her community? So those are two of my examples. And I could keep going with more, Sean, because these are my favorite parts too. The stories behind the work and how they are now thriving in their lives. And more new barriers will come. I don't say that everything becomes perfect, but it's those moments when they get to a point that they have reached a goal and their lives are expanding. It's just wonderful for us to hear.
Honestly, Erika, I'd love to hear more because we're talking education and community. Those are two things I really love. But
Yes. Yeah.
unfortunately, we are running out of time, and there's a few more things I want to make sure we hit here.
Of course.
So, a bit of a personal question for you, Erika.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you see happening over and over again to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be? How do we stop it?
One thing that keeps on happening over and over is not paying attention to what they are trying to tell us. May it be they are trying to tell us through their behavior, through their words, through their expressions, through their body movements, and other people thinking they know best than them. And that's why one of our pillars of advocacy is person centered. And we always go back to what is what does this person want, what they are interested in, what are their needs, and from there we build plans. But it's the not paying attention and not listening to their personal experience in the way that they express, because not everyone speaks or expresses verbally, but we all express in different ways. And how to stop it is making the pause and taking the time, Sean, over and over. When we live in a very fast-paced society, and what we find over and over is like, let's just slow down, pay attention, listen, pause, give them the time that they need to express what they want, and really pay attention and believe them. So that those would be my key ones to share.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now let's talk about Inclusion BC. What is the
Mhm.
one thing that everyone needs to know about Inclusion BC?
Oh, I want people to know that we are here to journey alongside people, organizations, and systems, and to stay focused on that vision of a world where everybody belongs. We all can do something about it. We have resources, knowledge, and the perseverance to keep on going. Um, and we center the voices of people, and we want you to know that we are here for the long haul. And we'll always strive to be person centered, right space, collaborative, and solutions. That's what we want to do.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now, for folks that are interested in becoming a member of Inclusion BC, volunteering with Inclusion BC, or they're just looking for more information, how can they reach out to you and get that? Are we talking 1-800 number, fax number, website, carrier pigeon? What do they do?
So to get in contact with us, you can find us on our website, that is inclusionbc.org. You will find all our information in there, our campaigns, our services, our approach to advocacy. If people are wanting to connect with us via email, I encourage them to contact us at info@inclusionbc.org. And if you want to connect with us by phone, our 1-800 number is 1-800-618-1119. And for those who live in BC, our local number is 604-777-9100. We are, our main office is located in New Westminster, which is located on the traditional and unceded lands of the Kakite Nation by the Fraser River, where we feel very fortunate to do our work. And we have members and volunteers across the province who live in the unceded lands of multiple First Nations in our province.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Erika. And unfortunately, we're out of time. Would you care to say goodbye to the folks at home?
thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Voices for Ability, for inviting me. This is a wonderful conversation, and let's keep on doing this. We're in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Erika Cedillo, the Director of Public Policy and Programs for Inclusion BC. That's all the time we have for today, folks. I'm Sean Pickard. Until next time, bye for now.